Michelle, what prevents people from accomplishing their fitness goals in your opinion?
Oh, this is good. I could probably give a long list of things, if we're narrowing it down to like generalities, first of all, everyone has different goals. Some people want to lose weight, some people want to, gain strength, some people just really want to be there for their kids. Everyone has different goals, and one is not better than the other. But I think it all starts with a really strong desire to feel better. You really have to want it because change is hard. And if you're not really committed and you don't really want it in a strong way, or you feel like you're doing it for someone else, it's not going to last.
True.
But the desire is just the beginning. I think people get tripped up in the way that they think about fitness. Like, for example, they're like, okay, I'm going to start this diet and I'm going to go all in. And then if they make one mistake, they feel like they failed. And so they just give up. So that keeps them like mindsets like, oh, I just messed up. I can't do it again. That's like starts in the mind, right? So that keeps them from taking that consistent action. But I also think that there's a lot of information out there, like the Google trap is what I call it, where people just like, oh, okay, and they Google everything, and they're like, oh, and then they realize, oh, everyone says something a little bit different, so it kind of paralyzes them. The other thing is, I think people really want something so badly and they get into it, but if they don't have a plan and they don't have that structure to keep them, you know, along the right path, then it's easy to give up and to feel overwhelmed. And then they feel like something, oh, I did something wrong. I'm just not good at this. And then it keeps them from making that effort again in the future, which sucks because there's so much, you don't, it doesn't have to be that way. Right.
For sure.
So, Randall, in your opinion, what do you think it is that prevents people from reaching their financial fitness goals?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that people are sometimes waiting for this big change to happen before they start working towards their goals to begin with. I think for some people, it's, like that first of the new year, right? So that New Year's Eve wish of, hey, let me get this done with my finances, pay off debt, save my child's college, whatever the case may be. It's like, well, why wait for that specific event to happen? In networking, the weird thing that actually happens, and it's hard to explain, is really I would be in a networking event and somebody might say something like, well, you know what, I really need to start working on my financial plan, but I need to get some things in order first, which is kind of weird because if you think about it, they're basically waiting to get stuff in order before they meet with someone to help them get stuff in order, right? Which
Exactly.
doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense, but I think I understand where it comes from, just because sometimes we're embarrassed about where we're at right now, but we need to somehow get past that and just focus on what we want to actually accomplish, which is the second thing. I think that a lot of people tend to compare their themselves to others. So I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. I won't pretend to be, but I imagine when you look at somebody's life on Instagram, they might be the same age as you, and you're looking at all of the things that they're accomplishing, and you start thinking, well, crap, why am I not accomplishing those things? We went to the same high school, we went to the same college. I'm smarter than that person, but look at what they're doing. I think that that's just a bad habit in general. We need to set our own goals and focus on those goals. And the way that we should measure our progress isn't by whether or not somebody else is accomplishing their goals. We have no idea what their goals are. It's about whether or not we're making progress towards our own goals. And as long as we could focus on that, that'll break that cycle for sure. And then the last thing I've noticed, and I'll go back to my own personal fitness journey as well. Whenever I started to gain weight, in large part, it was because I stopped measuring, right? I stopped getting on the scale. And the next thing you know, it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, and you weigh a lot more than you thought you were weighing, right? The same thing happens with finances. Sometimes people, they stop measuring. So they don't look at their credit card balance because they know that they spent a little bit too much for Christmas or for the holidays or on vacation. So they don't even want to look at that balance. They just send in the payment that they know would cover the minimum and they move on with life. The minute that you start neglecting that, that's when things start to become worse than they are. Because in many cases, we all spend more money than we think we do. Even when we think we're being good, sometimes we spend a little bit more. So it's better to err on the side of caution and continuing to measure that progress towards your goal.
So, for fitness or for finances, what would measuring look like? Like, is that looking at your finances? Like, what is that exactly you think?
That's a really good question. So the first step, I think the most basic step, is just having an awareness of how much you spend each month compared to your income. The second step is really going to be going back to savings goals as well. So it's hard to create a saving goal if you haven't created a long-term goal. And I think you mentioned this when you answered the same question, because if you look at Google and you say, okay, well, let me save 15% of my check, right? And you do that for 12 months straight. At some point, you're going to have a good amount of money saved up, and you don't really have a direct purpose for it. Is it there for emergencies, right? How much of it is there for emergencies? Is it there for to spend on vacation or for retirement? Like, what is the money actually for? If you don't know what it's for, you're gonna spend it. I always tease that money spends itself, but it's kind of true, right? If you save money and there's no intentionality behind it, then you're gonna find yourself not having that money that you saved for very long, even if it's because a family member needs some help or something like that. So the second step really would be setting that saving goal, but in order to do that, you would actually have to have long-term goals that you're saving for to begin with. So measuring that would be, if your goal is paying off debt, and you check every month and you see, well, where was I supposed to be this month? How much of my debt should I have paid off by now, right? If it's a savings goal, well, how much should be in my accounts by now, right? That's how you measure that progress, right? So you should be doing the activities, which is actually saving the money. But it's like, okay, I was supposed to have 500 or 5,000 saved by this period of time. Do I actually have that? Am I on track or am I behind? That's what that would look like from a measuring standpoint with financial planning.
Okay, cool. I tell my clients too, what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed can be improved upon. Awareness is
Awesome.
key, right?
I love that. I love that.
Hmm.
So, what are the biggest mental shifts that you think people need to have in order to accomplish their goals?
Yeah, so because I work a lot with mindset, I this is really close to my heart and it gets me excited. Like the foundation for what I do and my method is really based in hope, which I define as believing that you are already worthy and you are already powerful. So you have to believe, I think, especially with the kinds of clients that I work with, you have to believe that you're worthy of better than your current situation. I think a lot of us don't treat our bodies well because we subconsciously or consciously don't believe that we deserve good things, right? So, I mean, taking care of your body, spending time to work out when you don't feel like it, making that choice to eat well when you don't feel like it or it's not easy, taking care of your body, like you only do that for someone that you care about, right?
For
Like
sure.
you do that for a baby that that is helpless and you want to provide for them, you love them. We have to kind of do that for ourselves. The other belief I think that we need to have, like the big mindset shift, is like I'm capable, I'm powerful, like I can do this, like I'm capable of achieving my goals. Because I think
Yeah.
there's so much self-talk about, oh, I'm a failure, oh, if I make a mistake, I'm done for, and I fail at everything, I constantly I can't do this. And changing that to like I can achieve my goals, like this is possible for me and I deserve it, so let's go. I think those two mindset shifts are key.
For sure. And I don't know, I've heard people talk about like affirmations and all of that stuff. This wasn't necessarily an affirmation that I did for myself, but I noticed during the pandemic, there were certain habits I was trying to build. And, as we think about ourselves like, oh man, I'm so unlucky. Like, look at this, these events that just happened to me this year. They're not happening to anybody else. I'm the most unlucky person in the world, right?
Right.
And we start to believe that kind of stuff the more we tell ourselves that, right? But going through the pandemic, one of the things that I just wrote down on my iPad screensaver was like, I accomplished my goals. And for myself, I realized that it would created this kind of mindset shift where it's just like, yeah, I'm the kind of person that does this thing. So for my clients, the same thing. For those of you that are listening to this and think that, oh man, I'm the kind of person that's always in debts and I'm late on paying my bills, and like that's just a story you tell yourself. If you were telling the world that you're the type of person that pays their debt on time and that's the energy you put out there, you could do it. There's nothing unique about you that stops you from doing those things. It's just a decision that you haven't made yet, right? So the minute you make that decision and you change your mindset and tell yourself that to the point where you believe it, then I think that's a big shift for sure.
Absolutely, that identity shift. Like I am someone who works out, I am someone who takes care of myself, I am someone who takes care of my body, or I am someone who is good with money. That kind of
For sure.
mindset shift. Yeah.
Definitely. And not to take it to the other extreme where I've seen some people that would say something like, oh yes, I'm the kind of person that's going to make millions this year, right? Like, don't get me wrong, if you want to be that ambitious, go do it, right? It can be done. However, what you want to do is make sure that these are things that you're telling yourself, but that you actually believe as well, right? And
Exactly.
usually when you believe something, you could see some path of getting there. You know what I mean? Like, you understand what it is that you're going to do to get that. So if that is your ambitious goal to do whatever you're going to do, make sure that you have a path towards that goal that you believe, and that you're holding yourself accountable to that goal, or else now you're just kind of making a wish list, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not really believing in it. So
How about you? What do you feel like are the biggest mental shifts that are important, like for someone, for a client to be successful in reaching their goals?
yeah, definitely. So I think it's once they start putting the plan into action, right? So I get the benefit of showing someone that, like, just say, for example, someone wants to put their child through college, right? We identify the college, we know about how much it's going to cost. I have software that basically tells me, hey, if we invest like this and if we save this amount with these assumptions, um, this person should reasonably expect to accomplish this goal. So in this case, paying for their child's college tuition. So the minute that they make that one decision to actually save for their child's college, and let's say that's $250 a month, and they set up that automatic contribution of $250 a month, and they start to believe, look, there's nothing that's going to happen in my life that's going to prevent me from actually saving this amount of money, and they just treat it like any other bill. I think at that point in time they already realize that their child's education is paid for. So from that mindset shift, they went from somebody like, man, I hope that one day I could pay for my child's education, that's a dream for me, to, oh, I just paid for my child's education, right? Because you made that one single decision. It's not a decision that you have to keep making over and over again, right? You just set it up, it's automatic, and now you know you're going to be there. Now it's on me to manage the investments and make sure that the rest of it happens as well.
It breeds confidence, taking that
Definitely.
action. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now the next goal, that even if it's a larger goal, it becomes the same thing, right? Identify what it is that I need to do, make the thing that I need to do as easy as possible to do every month, and I already accomplished the goal. You could always already treat it like you've accomplished the goal because you really have, right? It's only a matter of time at that point in time.
That's cool. I like that. So, does it ever get easier to have those good financial habits or maintain your finances in a way that you're happy with?
That's a really good question, and the truth is that it doesn't. But I'll give more of an explanation, right? Because I think the idea that some people have is that for a wealthier person or somebody that has a higher income, it's easier to manage finances, and that's really not the truth, right? Somebody that has a higher income, for the most part, has higher expenses to go along with that higher income as well, right? So from that regard, it doesn't necessarily become an easier thing just because you have more money. So if we took that off the table and we think about, okay, does somebody that's accomplishing their financial goals for their current financial situation, so their current resources, does that become easier 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Probably not, because you're dealing with the same amount of resources, right? Your income limit is your income limit, and you're still having to figure out ways to save that money. And if you stop saving the money, like if you wake up one day and you stop exercising, I'm sure things go downhill if the more you continue to do that, right? So it's a habit that you have to continue doing. But what I'll say is, from the mindset perspective, it probably does get easier, right? So at some point in time, you start seeing the results and you start believing that, okay, the things that I'm doing are worthwhile, right? Whereas when you're just starting out, you're still second guessing, like, okay, I'm saving all this money, but such and such is driving this, and I'm not driving that. You know what I mean? Like, is this going to pay off, or should I just go buy a car that I want? Right? The more you start to see the results, then the more your mindset shifts, and then at that point in time, it becomes easier from a mental standpoint. But from a resource standpoint, your resources may not have changed, so you still need to continue doing the same thing, and that might not get easier.
Yeah, I agree.
Michelle, so does it get any easier for you or for your clients to maintain their fitness levels as it goes along?
So, if you're trying to, depending on where you're coming from, because some people grow up with healthier habits in their family, so it maybe takes less effort for them to make changes. It's all about the starting point. But, just in terms of progress, like you were saying, depending on where you're at to begin with, it does take it does take effort. It takes energy, it takes focus to create new habits because your brain is not used to it. But I also think that, the more you do certain things, the easier, like it kind of like creates a groove in your brain, and your brain becomes more accustomed to it and more familiar with it. Just like you said, the mindset aspect becomes easier with time. But I think people maybe especially in the beginning, they overestimate how hard it is to do. So they think, oh, it's too hard to create all these changes. I can't do it. And then they underestimate how long it takes. So they feel like I'm putting all this effort into creating these new habits. Like it should be like I should have it down in like a week or a month or even just like a few months. Like, why isn't this easier? And I think that's what brings frustration. I think you have to be in it for the long game if you really want to make those lasting changes, because it does take time, and you always have to kind of be practicing those basics. Like, if you let it slip, it's so easy to go back to old habits or create those old habits again, right?
For sure.
And those bad habits again. So you have to kind of be diligent in keeping them up, and that's where the measuring comes in, the managing. Like, hey, am I on track? Am I doing it as like towards my goals as I should be?
I love that. I love that. It's some things that I haven't even really considered in those terms, underestimating how long something's going to take, for sure.
That's why patience and kindness and not getting so upset when you make a mistake, just being like, hey, I'm in this for the long term. Let's just get back on track, really is important, I think.